What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some news today. Um Bitcoin price, of course. Telegram got denied by the SEC, and some Bitcoin mining power shifting over to the States, as well as I'm going to make the case. A little speculation time as well. Why I believe that Bitcoin will be a world reserve currency. This is a question that we have asked for a while in this space, and I've been in Bitcoin since 2012, and the question has always been, will Bitcoin become a world reserve currency? And I think the question has been answered already, and I will make the case why I believe that here shortly. So let's jump into it. This on Cointelegraph says Bitcoin price rejects 7,000, but Tone Vase says 75% chance of Bitcoin bottomed. Bitcoin has maximum 15% chance of falling below 3,800 if current price levels continue, says trader Tone Vase as BTC nears $7,000. In a YouTube update on March 24th, an increasingly bullish Vase updated his outlook for BTC USD. He argued that around 6,750, the pair was sitting at resistance. Now, we all know Tone has been one of the, how should we say it, more conservative public figures. And, he's been calling for a very low bottom before we see a rise up. But let's see what Tone thinks about the markets now. Don't wait for the dip. Break above 6,800 and Bitcoin would all but eliminate the likelihood of dipping to new lows under 3,800. Only a 15% chance would remain. Going above 6,800, which we did briefly, just recently, as in like an hour ago, would maybe give me 85% confidence. We're not going to go below this, and we're almost there. We've almost broken it. We're sitting at resistance, he said, which we did break it, and we dropped back down. Right now, I believe there's a 20 to 25% chance we're going to go below 3,800. So what we've seen is that Bitcoin is still a very speculative asset, and it very much is bought and sold by investors and speculators and institutions now, and it hasn't been yet adopted on a global level, like I believe that it will be. So we are still going to see some massive volatility. Okay, so as we go back a little bit before, scroll down here a little bit more. As Cointelegraph reported, Vase had previously sounded the alarm about a potential Bitcoin collapse to as low as 2,000 before May's block reward halving. Now, however, he told traders that it was foolish to avoid entering the market in hope of catching the next dip. He continued, that still means that if you can't wait for another pullback to 3,500. You should be in Bitcoin by now. So Tone has switched his tone to bullish, more positive, which is nice to see. Actually, I like Tone. He's a good guy. And the argument kind of down here comes under the new unlimited money printing from the Fed here with this new stimulus, which I will touch on here shortly. Vase was speaking at United States lawmakers agreed on a giant stimulus package to bail out consumers and business over coronavirus. The package, worth an estimated $6 trillion with a T, followed the Federal Reserve embarking unlimited money printing. For multiple commentators, including Binance Changpeng Zhao, fiscal trends suggest that it would be even easier for Bitcoin to hit a $2 trillion market cap. Dan Hell, Director of Business Development at fellow exchange Kraken, added on Twitter, $6 trillion stimulus package for just one country, and you don't think Bitcoin can reach a $2 trillion market cap. I think it's obvious that Bitcoin will hit a $2 trillion market cap. The question is when. So when it comes to price speculation, here's what I think. So I believe that since 2016 or so, institutions have been building the infrastructure that they needed in order to facilitate holding, or offering Bitcoin and other cryptos as a service. So, and I believe that it will continue to grow in that direction of institutions providing Bitcoin as a service, whether it's custody or payments, remittance, whatever the case may be. And as that happens, the volatility will become less because there will actually be more use case and people will be using it for actually real world reasons. But we do need more infrastructure for that to happen. So right now we're still in a very volatile time. For me, I believe that right now the markets are very, very shaky. And, I still believe that a lot of this price action that we're seeing is caused by speculators. And I just would be cautious. I am cautious that when the traditional market will collapse, and when it does, I believe that Bitcoin at that time is going to fall with it. However, I believe that it's going to rebound fairly quickly from that point. So that's just watch out for that. And I'll get into some more about the world reserve currency situation in a minute here. Next up, Telegram denied. Court sides with SEC, grants injunction against issuing grams. Okay, so this is interesting and a little bit disappointing, and not so bad at the same time. So courts say that grams are securities under Howey test per a March 24th filing granting the Securities and Exchange Commission's request for a preliminary injunction. The court wrote that the court finds that the SEC has shown substantial likelihood of success in proving that the contracts and understandings at issue, including the sale of 2.9 billion grams to 175 purchasers in exchange for 1.7 billion, are part of a larger scheme to distribute those grams into a secondary public market, which would be supported by Telegram's ongoing efforts. Considering the economic realities under the Howey test, the court finds that in the context of that scheme, the resale of grams into the secondary public market would be an integral part of the sale of securities without required registration statements. So basically, what's going on here is they're saying that what they're concerned about is the damage that would come from what we have seen historically in ICOs, where the earliest investors, which are usually institutions, are able to buy these tokens that eventually will be sold to public at a very, very good discount, usually in a likelihood of 30 to 90% off the public offering rate. How do I know? Well, I am an investor. So, and I have had access to a lot of these private sales, so very, very involved in this vertical of the space. And and I've also advised in projects as well, and just also know very much how this stuff works. So what typically happens is an institution, an investor, big fund, whatever, will negotiate extremely discounted rates, and they oftentimes do not get a lockup rate, a lockup period. A lockup period in traditional securities markets, especially in the States, is usually 1 year that the asset or the security would be locked up before it can be resold in some type of public market. Often with ICOs, there never is a lockup period. So what happens usually is, these guys will buy up these tokens at a discount, and then there will be a ton of hype around the project. They will release it. There's typically an immediate pump after the token goes public, and then markets public usually buys a token at this pumped price, believing that it's going to keep going up, and then all the early investors dump on the project. They make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20x right up the bat, and all the retail investors who aren't rich typically are left holding bags. And this is what they're talking about here in this SEC court case. So yeah, basically that's it. I mean, all this just kind of justifies exactly what I said before. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so and then also, how do I feel about this? First of all, I think ICOs, how they're meant to be, is a beautiful thing. Typically before ICOs were around, if a project wanted to raise money, they'd usually have to do a round from friends and family, which can be extremely difficult. And then they would have to go through usually an angel investor and pitch, and then they'd have to go through VCs. They'd have to give away a lot of their equity, and when it's all said and done, it's a very, very daunting process. Most people don't know how to do this, and and then you don't also give an opportunity to people who believe in you to also buy in on the company and take an opportunity. What an ICO allowed people to do is, instead of raising money from a few wealthy people, you could raise money from a lot of average people, people who have $5, $10, $15, $50, $100 of disposable or investable income. This is very cool. It allows your average person to be an investor, and it also allows a project to raise money from a lot of people who believe in the idea. And of course, if you're investing in something early because you believe in the idea, yeah, of course you expect, some type of return, a profit in the future. But that's the idea behind an ICO, and it's actually a beautiful idea in theory. So this is actually a fairly scary court case in the fact that if the court finalizes this injunction and says that the gram or TON cannot be sold to public, it might set precedent in the courts, stating that ICOs cannot exist. If that happens, that would be a tragedy. However, remember that a ICO should be for a decentralized protocol, and you also don't have to participate with jurisdictions that don't appreciate this kind of innovation. So you can always just leave and do it somewhere else and raise money from jurisdictions that are more friendly, which they do exist. So if this is a precedent set in the United States court systems, well, move. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, I guess, is through a security token offering, which seems like it just defeats the purpose, because then you're dealing with centralized governments and asking permission. And if what you're building is truly disruptive, it's probably not going to be something that they like very much. Yeah. Okay, next. So Jack Dorsey is in the news again. Jack Dorsey is also the CEO of Twitter, and also the Cash App. So Square says Bitcoin engagement on its Cash App has grown in recent weeks amid market volatility. Square's chief financial officer said during the investor call on Tuesday that it has seen a recent uptick in Bitcoin engagement via its Cash App amid the market turmoil driven by the coronavirus. Adoption and engagement of fractional equity investing in Bitcoin has accelerated in recent weeks given recent market interest and volatility. CFO Amrita, and I'm just going to say Amrita because I do not want to butcher that last name, but Amrita said on the call. Just in case, I mean, just if you don't know, like fractional equity investing in Bitcoin just means buying sats, basically, because Bitcoin is fungible and you can break it up into 100 million pieces. So it was a huge. It's been increasing the Bitcoin purchases on Cash App, which, if you don't know, is already a tremendous avenue for people to trade their fiats for Bitcoin, and it's very, very convenient. Cash App last week set an internal record for US in terms of customer acquisition, with a record number of new actives in the week, primarily from organic acquisition, and a lot of that coming out of the creative use cases that we're seeing in social media, Amrita said. So even amongst this crazy volatility, it shows that people are still ever increasingly interested in Bitcoin. This is actually a good sign for Bitcoin in the argument of a hedge against the Finance 1.0, traditional markets, essentially. So this is a clue that people are likely to look for alternative investments when the traditional markets become incredibly unstable. It's, again, a very, very good sign for Bitcoin long term, as I do believe that traditional markets are going to collapse. I don't know when now. They should have happened already, but they will sometime. Okay, so this is fairly new. If you haven't heard about it, what I found is interesting is, so U.S. Senate floats digital dollar bill after House scrubs term from coronavirus relief plan. So basically, yesterday they were calling this a digital dollar for corona relief, and today they just wanted to remove the coronavirus part of it because it never should have been there in the first place, because they have been planning this for a very long time, probably a couple years at least. It is impossible to roll out a digital dollar in a matter of weeks. China's been announcing their digital yuan for quite some time, and I mean, I've been saying this has been coming for a long time. It just makes sense, Of course, the federal banks and governments would love to have their currency on a private permission blockchain. They want to be able to see everything that's going on and have complete control. This is scary, in my opinion, and I'll get into that in a bit. But if you don't know, then I will tell you. A draft bill posted on Tuesday at the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs defines a digital dollar and details how it might be maintained. The bill echoes language from a pair of draft U.S. House bills amid stimulating the economy during the coronavirus outbreak. The bill, introduced by Ranking Member Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, is not proposing a crypto dollar, but a digitized version of the existing dollar, a process advocates, including the former Commodity Futures Trading Commission Chairman Chris Giancarlo, have called to maintain U.S. financial hegemony. According to the draft, the digital dollar will be dollar balances consisting of digital ledger entries recorded as liabilities in the account of any Federal Reserve Bank. The bill even notes that such wallets should be branded as Fed accounts. This sounds bad. Like a pair of draft bills in the U.S. House of Representatives, the proposed digital dollar would be operated and maintained by the Federal Reserve of the U.S. Central Bank. The Fed would be responsible for maintaining the digital wallets to support the funds on behalf of individuals. Federal Reserve member banks could create a pass-through digital dollar wallet, which would hold a person's share of pooled reserve balance that the member bank maintains at any Fed bank. Each member bank shall establish and maintain a separate legal entity for the exclusive purpose of holding all assets and maintaining all liabilities associated with the pass-through digital wallet, the bill states. States might also designate some non-member banks to offer those wallets. I wonder who that will be. I do actually wonder who that would be. The House draft bills mentioned the digital dollar as one potential method for distributing relief funds to U.S. residents during ongoing coronavirus outbreak. Unemployment numbers have spiked as social distancing and shelter-in-place orders have cut sharply into retail revenues. However, the Senate version appears to exist independently of any such relief. Yep. So this is what the title kind of discusses about. This has obviously been planned for some time. That much is clear. And, I'm under the assumption, big assumption here, but it makes sense to me, that this coronavirus, let's just say it was a perfect timing to find a scapegoat for the economy, which was about to fail anyway. So whether it was coincidence or not, that's up for you to decide, but nonetheless, it is being used as a scapegoat for why our economy is crashing. Of course, it has nothing to do with the gross irresponsibilities of the institutions and banks and a monetary policy that's based on debt. So, so anyway, they wanted to immediately roll this out and use the whole Corona stimulus package thing as the accelerator to get this out into the market. And it sounds like a perfectly good reason. But yeah, again, this is what I have been saying for a very long time, that cash is something that we will not see very much longer. It will be going away. It makes a whole lot more sense for a government who wants to remain in control to be able to control the monetary supply completely and see exactly where it goes. Again, this will not be a crypto dollar. This will be a central bank digital dollar that is kept on a blockchain-like system that is private and permissioned without probably transparency, and it will be very scary. It eliminates the ability for you to have any kind of cash tucked away for a rainy day kind of scenario. I don't know how much you trust the governments, but let's just say that you had a situation where you needed to flee for whatever reason, and whether it's ethically correct or not, someone in the government didn't like what you did, and then they could just cut off your access to your own money at any given time. If they decide that you shouldn't have access to your money anymore, that they could just turn it off and you won't. And right now, at least we have cash, which no one can take away from you. This is also playing into the case of Bitcoin adoption. And right on back of that, we have China versus United States in the digital yuan versus digital dollar. So turning a crisis into an opportunity, China gets one step closer to CBDC. As central banks around the world are cutting interest rates to zero and taking aggressive actions against the economic recession due to the coronavirus pandemic, so they say, China's central bank is accelerating its central bank digital currency plan. According to the Global Times report on March 24th, China is one step closer to issuing its CBDC. The Bank of China has completed development of the basic functions of the official digital currency and is now drafting laws that will help its implementation. Considering China makes decisions with basically one, guy or family, this should move fairly quickly. However, I do have some sources in China who tell me that right now they're very, very much focused on the coronavirus, and even though this article states that they plan to roll it out in April, I don't think it'll be quite ready by then. We will have to see. Anyway, this is what I have been told. There's massive partners behind this. The Global Times also mentioned a number of Shenzhen-based private companies, including Alibaba, Tencent, Huawei, and China merchant banks that participated in the development of the digital currency. Chao Yan, managing director of Digital Renaissance Foundation, told the news agency that these private companies were selected based on their rich blockchain and third-party payments experiences. So China has leveraged its advanced mobile payments companies, Alibaba's Alipay and Tencent's WeChat Pay together have more than 1.7 billion active accounts across China, 300 million more than the country's population. Okay, that's a lot. Yeah, so everybody in China basically has this, and then most people have at least both of them. They have blended social media, e-commerce, and payments to create an advanced online commercial infrastructure. Alipay reportedly publicized 5 patents related to China's official digital currency between January 21st to March 17th. Blah, blah, blah. China's long-term goal is to get ahead of the international economic development game, which what this means is China is their long-term goal is to have the yuan surpass the US dollar as the kind of global reserve currency, or at least gain independence from it. Right now, the US dollar is known as the US or the world reserve currency, and it's pegged to the petrodollar, which is oil traded in US dollars, and you guys have probably heard this before. And anybody who has tried to go against using the US dollar for things like oil trading or against the Federal Reserve, things have not ended well for those people. But China is too big of a fish to fry, and we have been at quite a cold war of currencies and trade as of lately. And so this is quite the new Cold War going on, I guess. We had space race, and we had trade wars, and now we've got currency wars. And this article goes into much more about like how it's used as a economic bio weapon or something like that. But what is very, very interesting is China has, it's not just China, where they plan on using the digital yuan. They are planning on rolling out in the Belt and Road Initiative, which has over 70 countries involved in Africa, Europe, and Asia. So they definitely have the ability to have the digital yuan have a massive global presence. I will get back into some of this in a bit. Again, I will get back into this, why the case is good for... Actually, I'll just tell you now. So, things like Libra and the US digital dollar and the digital yuan, these are not the most beneficial for you and me and us as people. They are beneficial to governments, and yes, they will make life easier to pay for things, and probably fairly efficient as well. Facebook has quite the infrastructure, and if you're in Asia, like WeChat and Alipay are everywhere, and everybody has a smartphone, but not everybody has a bank. So this is actually can be seen as a good thing for crypto adoption, or especially Bitcoin adoption. I'll tell you why. This will allow people to get used to using a digital currency to pay for things. It'll just get them used to it, like China is already. China really adopted using their smartphone to pay for things because they didn't have the whole credit card era that we did. And so they went from cash to cell phone. But the rest of the world, or not the rest of the world, but the Western world had this credit card thing. And so now, things like Apple Pay and Google Pay, they're not nearly as adopted as they are in, these things are in China. So the convenience of something like Libra from Facebook or the US digital dollar will get people familiar with using their phones for paying for things, which will be nice. And infrastructure will be built up for that as well. And then what will happen is people will one day realize that their privacies are being invaded. Facebook's terms of services are changing, or the U.S. government or IRS just starts withdrawing money from their accounts because they have access to it, and so people will start having these kind of personal violations of their money, and at that point, people will know or hear that there's an alternative called Bitcoin, and it's something that cannot be taken from you. You own your keys, you own your crypto. And so what will happen is if somebody, some government takes some money out of your account because you owe some taxes, or you had a parking ticket and so they just felt like maybe they'll just take it out of your account, or you find out that like Facebook has been using our data to sell you things that you don't need, whatever. These violations of essentially your privacy. People will then realize that there's a better alternative called Bitcoin, and hey, they already know how to use it because they've been using these cell phone things for payments, and it'll make it easy for them to then switch to a public, decentralized, open protocol like Bitcoin. Okay, this is kind of cool. It's not a very new story. I mean, it's from last month, but I think it's important because I don't really know if anyone has been talking about it. But we always talk about the majority of the hash power from Bitcoin mining comes from China, and people are concerned about that, and rightfully so. I mean, game theory on Bitcoin suggests that a company that survives on Bitcoin would never actually do something like a 51% attack, because that would be economic suicide. Why would you bite the hand that feeds you, essentially? Why would you, cause something to decrease in value by violating the trust in order to try to like double spend or something like that? All your assets would go to zero. So anyway, that's game theory. Get that another time. But anyway, good news. Peter Thiel-backed Layer 1 begins mining Bitcoin at its West Texas facility. So there was some speculation on what this big, huge facility in Texas was going to be all about. And it is Layer 1 technologies. This is very, very cool. And it's a very different approach to any mining operation that I've seen so far. Bitcoin mining startup Layer 1 has started mining in West Texas site. The site expects to scale to 200 megawatts within a few months. It aims to capture 30% of the total network hash rate by the end of 2021. Layer 1 raised $50 million so far from Peter Thiel, Shasta Ventures, also the Winklevoss twins, and I think a few others I can't remember. So they plan on doing this whole operation in these containers, like shipping containers, and each one will have 2.5 megawatts. And what is really cool is they're actually doing this liquid cooling technology to combat high temperatures in the region. So if any of you have built a computer before and have a graphics card or something, or a computer processor that is very, very fast, that generates a lot of heat, you might know what liquid cooling is. If you don't, what it is basically a cooling system that uses a liquid that runs over the computer parts, essentially, to keep them cool. This also helps with efficiency because other mining farms or equipment are air cooled, meaning that they're blowing air onto the machines. Now, this can be a problem because it accelerates corrosion and rust and dust and things like that aren't very good for machines. So where these mining chips are actually being produced by Layer 1 technology, and they have liquid cooling, which allows them to be enclosed and protected from the elements of the outside, increasing longevity and efficiency. So notably, Layer 1 CEO Alexander Legal said they hope to eventually encompass 30% of the total Bitcoin hash rate by the end of 2021, with existing site and several others that they have acquired. This number, if realized, would overshadow the network hash rate shares of all Bitcoin mining pools, with the leading pools like F2 Pool and Poolin currently providing around 18% of the total network hash power, respectively. Okay, this is the interesting part here. Self-produced ASICs. So right now, everybody else needs to buy their ASICs, typically from like Bitmain, who produces the ASIC chips. And usually when they buy them, even if they say that they're brand new and the latest technology, they're usually always not. In fact, I've heard reports of them selling like refurbished mining rigs to customers as brand new, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, this is interesting. Aiming at repatriating U.S. Bitcoin mining, Layer 1 chose to locate its mining farm in Texas. In an attempt to counterbalance Chinese miners' 65% control over the network, the firm also designed and manufactured its own mining equipment, instead of directly purchasing them from mining rig makers, most of which, such as Bitmain and MicroBT, are based in China as well. According to Legal, the firm will use 10-nanometer computer chips from South Korea-based Samsung Foundry for its equipment, but these will be as performing as TSMC's 7-nanometer, he said. In general, the smaller the computer chips are, the more can be packed onto the same chipboard, boosting the overall computing power. However, Layer 1's computer mining equipment won't be ready until mid-2020 and is currently using third-party machines, according to Legal. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. The rest is just more details if you want to read it. But yeah, so I mean, and just one more thing too, they want to do over 1,000 megawatts at this facility, and probably more as time goes on. But this is exciting. Like, it'll help decentralize mining, and they actually have a really good plan to do that. Okay, now we go into wild speculation time, and this is the case I'm going to make for Bitcoin to become a world reserve currency. So reserve currency is a foreign currency that is held in significant quantities by central banks or other monetary authorities as part of their foreign exchange reserves. The reserve currency can be used in international transactions, international investments, and all aspects of the global economy. It is often considered a hard currency or safe haven currency. Okay, that's the definition of a world reserve currency. So you might have seen this article before. This is just for me to make the case. This is from February 11th, 2020. 40 German banks seek regulators' green light to offer Bitcoin custody. So the case I'm going to make here is that the institutions, I touched on it earlier, saying that institutions and banks are going to be offering or are offering Bitcoin as a service. What this means is that Bitcoin is going to have to be held in their reserves in order for them to offer it as a service. And you can better believe that if 40 banks essentially overnight opted for the ability to offer Bitcoin as a service as soon as it became feasible, then other banks will do the same thing as regulatory environments permit this to happen. Further on the case, Italian bank opens Bitcoin trading to 1.2 million during lockdown. This is more recent. This is just from a few days ago, March 19th. Growing crypto adoption in COVID-19 outbreak has encouraged Italy's Banco Sella to launch a Bitcoin trading service. The trading is conducted via the bank's Hype platform, with the bank acting as an intermediary to mitigate against potential security risks with cryptocurrency exchanges. With the country in lockdown and everyone stuck at home, the bank is capitalizing on growing interest in Bitcoin as a safe way to transfer money internationally to the midst of the crisis. 1.2 million Italians already use Hype. About 1.2 million Italians already use Banca Stella's Hype to carry out transactions, and not only will they be able to buy and sell Bitcoin, they'll also be able to pay for goods and services with cryptocurrency. So again, this is just another bank offering Bitcoin as a service. And here we go. Here's another one. Caitlin Long, the lady that is always helping with the regulations in Wyoming. Go Wyoming. Well done. Also has a bank, and she just hired her C-suite, her executive suite of employees. And just this article goes into talking about how she had to find the right type of executive that has both one innovative and has a traditional mindset at the same time. So she actually got a fairly impressive CTO. This guy Bishop, who is a senior blockchain engineer and custody architect at LedgerX. So also will be helping with the custody at Avanti Financial Group, which is Caitlin Long's bank. And yeah, so this just goes on to, again, this is just for my case for Bitcoin as a world reserve currency, and just more banks and more banks. So this is just a complete guide. Actually, it's not complete. It's just a guide to the best Bitcoin-friendly banks in the world. Very subjective opinions here, but here's some of them, like WireX, Ali Bank, USAA, Simple Bank, Goldman Sachs, not a small one, Chime Bank, and then it talks about banks that ban or limit Bitcoin purchases, which are the very, very traditional boring banks that I feel like will pivot sooner or later. They're just usually ran by very old people who don't really understand what's going on, don't care to think, they still probably feel like Bitcoin is magic internet money, and they're just more stubborn. So yeah, most of them also got bailed out in the 2008 crisis because they were really, really bad. And in the nicest way to say it. And so this year could be the year that we see this kind of officially or even unofficially recognized as a world reserve currency. So this talks about two of the biggest VCs in the Bitcoin space, Novogratz, and also talks about Tim Draper as well. And so Novogratz, 2020 year Bitcoin. It's safe to say that the past several weeks have been brutal in most financial markets, including the cryptocurrency scene. Some popular indexes plunged so hard they had to halt trading on several occasions to prevent further price massacres. The decentralized nature of the cryptocurrency market, however, doesn't allow stop trading sessions. Therefore, price slumps up to 40% in a day are entirely possible. Since the middle of March, when Bitcoin touched 3,600 in one of its worst 24-hour trading periods ever, the primary cryptocurrency has recovered to approximately 6,000 and even more right now. Those sorts of fervent swings are somewhat expected in the cryptocurrency market. Galaxy Digital's Novogratz also confirmed the high levels of volatility and warned that the community should expect more of the same. However, he believes that Bitcoin will have a significant role in 2020 due to its general economic features. He tweeted, BTC will continue to be volatile over the next few months, which I talked about earlier, but the macro backdrop is why it was created and will be and needs to be Bitcoin's year. So I think that it's going to be 2021. Why? Because I think that Bitcoin needs to surpass $250,000 for it to really be embraced by all the global institutions. At $250,000 per Bitcoin, it will usurp the US dollar and very, very much make the case for something that is definitely serious to be taken. I think Bitcoin right now, actually I'm not sure with the current price decrease, but I believe it's something like the 8th most valuable currency in the world. On here, Novogratz is not the only one thinking that Bitcoin will perform well in a recession. Venture capitalist investor Tim Draper recently said the benefits of Bitcoin and crypto over current systems will become apparent during the crisis. So I think it seems to be that market sentiment is definitely leaning toward a bullish situation for Bitcoin. In my opinion, like I said before, I think we're going to see another dip when the financial markets dip. It seems to be a logical case that a lot of investors are going to flee to cash. So they're going to close out their leverage positions. They're going to sell the positions and find the opportunity for cash. I also believe that they are going to quickly buy in because people know the value and potential value for Bitcoin. And so they're going to pull out of current positions and buy the dip. So just be prepared for that. I don't know if or when it will happen for sure. That is just my opinion. Okay, so anyway, if institutions and banks around the world are offering Bitcoin as a service, they must have it in their reserves. Bitcoin, reserves, institutions around the world equal world reserve currency. That's been the question that we've all been wondering. Another thing too is, Bitcoin was released, the white paper, right after the 2008 financial crisis, specifically for what we're seeing now is this irresponsibility amongst the traditional financial markets and monetary policies. And it's been given 11 years to decentralize, mature, and grow strong. And when we see our markets crash, traditional markets, it's going to be really the opportunity when we get to see Bitcoin shine. So we've always been asking, will it become world reserve currency? And I'm very, very excited because we get to find out here fairly soon. And I have been waiting for this for a long time. And this is just a speculation from Max Keiser, but Russia and China could add Bitcoin to their strategic reserves, according to Max Keiser. Max Keiser is typically right about a lot of things. He can be a bit out there sometimes, but I think that he generally has the right idea about finance. So RT host Max Keiser has recently floated the wild theory that Russia and China might add Bitcoin to its reserves once gold standard makes a comeback in the United States. If the gold standard makes a comeback, I don't know if that's going to ever happen, but I do believe that probably Russia and China have already added Bitcoin to the reserves. That's just my opinion. I highly believe that to be the case. And last but not least, this is just something that I think that everyone should pay attention to, because poor Ross, if you don't know Ross, he was the Dread Pirate Roberts from the Silk Road. Silk Road was one of the first use cases that really put Bitcoin on the map, for better or worse. But Silk Road was an open marketplace that allowed anyone to buy and sell any type of good, and often used for a lot of illicit activities and drugs and things like that. And yeah, it probably was something that was illegal. However, the double life sentence that Ross is serving is, I think, incredibly unjustified. And so this is an online petition asking for Ross Albright's release that gathered 275,000 signatures. I did sign this a while back. And, Ross was a young guy who the court systems wanted to make an example of him as a deterrent to stop other people from doing similar things. So they gave him a unreasonable, unjust double life sentence. This is a guy who never physically harmed anybody, and actually created a marketplace that, you could argue this any direction you want to, but in my belief, it was a much better way for people who are going to buy drugs anyway to get them in a way safely from their own home, with some sort of quality assurance system where people could, review the vendors and kind of somewhat hold them accountable for quality and things like that. Whereas before, if you wanted to buy some drugs, you would have to go to a shady, drug dealer, gangster guy, to get a joint. And every time you did that, your life was in jeopardy. And there was also no quality assurance. This is also a reason that, things like, these drugs that kill people are getting cut with things that they don't know what it is, and blah, blah, blah. And so there's less likelihood of that to happen in an open marketplace where vendors are reviewed and are accountable and blah, blah, blah. So I really don't believe that what happened to Ross was fair. And I would encourage you to all go ahead and sign this petition as well. Yeah, it's just not, it's actually very, very unfair what happened to Ross. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe and like this video. That would be nice. I would like to continue to do this and bring you guys some news and my opinions about things. I have been in the space for quite some time and feel like I have a very good overall perspective of the space. And I love sharing information, and this is kind of what I've been doing for the past 8 or 9 years anyway, is talking to people about what's been going on. So thank you for your time, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers, guys. Bye.